I'm a random dumbass sitting at home in Los Angeles, California. And if I can see the immediate contradictions with what Antony Blinken has said over and over again. Jeremy, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I'm here.
Okay, I can hear you, but you are a little low. Hold on. Let me pop this out real quick. Boom. Can you hear me?
I got you. Am I still low?
Yeah, you're still low, but I can also increase your volume on my end. All right, we're good. We're good. This is fine.
I'm an old man.
No, I feel you. Ladies and gentlemen, investigative reporter Jeremy Scahill of Drop Site News, formerly of The Intercept and many other places, is here with us right now. And we're going to be talking about the events that unfolded earlier today, or that finalized earlier today, and what might happen down the line. Jeremy, thank you so much for your ongoing reporting on everything that has been happening.
Thank you for your reports recently, also where you were talking to the firefighters, and I mean, like, it's such a treasure that we have you, man.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I try my best. But in any case, there is a breaking story coming out of Drop Site, as a matter of fact, from the mediators on the Gaza ceasefire, from your institution. But before we get into that, I wanted to hear you break down everything that has happened in the last week or so, if possible.
Can I show you one thing? I'm going to pull this up on my phone. I just want to show you something that relates to everything that we're talking about here, which is that I obtained today. I'm in touch regularly with people that are on the Palestinian negotiating team. And I want to share this. We didn't do this as a story, so like this is an exclusive here. I obtained a document that was agreed to by Hamas on Monday. It's Wednesday right now. We're speaking. On Monday, I reported and others reported that Hamas had told the mediators from Qatar and Egypt that they accepted the ceasefire framework. And Tony Blinken and others kept saying the same lie that they've been repeating for many, many months, which is, oh, we're waiting on Hamas. So what I received was the actual signed and stamped document of the ceasefire agreement that now is public, with the signatures of each of Hamas's negotiators. Look at this. You see there?
Yeah.
Okay. This was delivered to the mediators on Monday. And Antony Blinken and other U.S. officials and Israeli officials continued up until hours ago to say, oh, we're waiting on Hamas, we're waiting on Hamas. This is what the Palestinians have been dealing with under Joe Biden for almost 16 months now, where there have been good faith efforts to try to engage in an exchange of captives. There are 10,000 plus Palestinians who are being held in Israeli prisons, jails, dungeons. More than 3,000 of them being held in this Orwellian administrative detention. And the negotiators who are working on behalf of the Palestinians, everyone says Hamas, but it's not just Hamas. There's multiple Palestinian factions that are involved with this. They agreed on Monday, and they actually put it in writing, stamped it, and they all signed it, all of their mediators. And Antony Blinken knew this because he was shown that document. And yet the lie continued to be promoted. This is concrete evidence, and there's other evidence, but this is a piece of concrete evidence in the thing that you and I are going to talk about right now, that over the past few days, what has actually happened is that the Israelis were trying to insert new conditions. The Israelis were refusing to provide actual maps of where they would withdraw their troops to. And the reasons the Palestinians wanted those maps is because when Israel doesn't do what they're supposed to, they want to be able to say this is a violation of the agreement. The Israelis want everything to be vague. So, I didn't mean to come in hot fire at you here, but it's like, I'm watching the commentary on this and the notion that it's been, Hamas that has prevented a ceasefire is a lie. How many Israeli, we're going to see, hopefully we're going to see a lot of living people come out of Gaza. There are children, the Bibas children. I hope as swiftly as possible that they are returned. They and their mother, and are immediately released. How many Israelis have been killed, in Gaza as a result of this kind of lie factory when deals were on the table? We don't even know how many Palestinians have been killed. The Hamas numbers, it's more than 46,000. This is a dramatic undercount.
Yeah.
You were talking as I came on about wanting to go in there. One of the reasons the Israelis don't want, non-Palestinian journalists in there is because when they start telling those stories, then people are going to have to take it seriously. When it's our Palestinian colleagues who they're hunting and murdering and killing their family members also, it's like, oh, well, they're all Hamas. And so I'm just giving you one example, like for the the community of people here that you hang out with every day. Like, this is just one small thing from a not powerful journalist that if I can get this document and share it with you guys, why aren't other journalists doing their jobs? Why aren't they saying, no, actually Antony Blinken is telling lies that are lethal lies?
Yeah. Instead of if like you have direct access to some of these people, you're obviously you're not like a little journalist. You are a veteran in the field. But I'll take it one step further. I'm a random dumbass sitting at home in Los Angeles, California. And if I can see the immediate contradictions with what Antony Blinken has said over and over again, as Israel worked to immediately contradict Antony Blinken, right after he kept saying, no, Israel actually is holding to this deal, but it's actually Hamas that's not holding to this deal. Not this last time around, mind you, but on numerous instances over the course of the past 15 months, then why can't anyone in mainstream news also recognize that? Why do they lap up everything that the American State Department puts out as law, basically, as the utmost truth that you can arrive at? It has been endlessly frustrating. And with the incoming administration, I'll take it one step further. When you have the Trump administration coming in and possibly implementing like ruthless autocratic approaches to media, press freedom, possibly going after political enemies, weaponizing the Department of Justice, all of this stuff, you need good journalism and you need people to have a sense that mainstream outlets, legacy publishers are actually committed to the truth, to do what the fourth estate is supposedly designed to do. And yet, in an effort to continue defending the American State Department's objectives in this region, the grand design that the American Uniparty has over the Middle East as they gear up for a much larger conflict with China, they have consistently eroded what remains of the little confidence that people could have had. They've completely lost an entire generation of people that saw with their own two eyes exactly what was going on, and then would tune into the New York Times or tune into CNN or tune into MSNBC, CBS, and the like, and see something entirely different and go, how can I ever trust these people ever again?
Yeah, I mean, and look already what's happening. The New York Times, I think it was yesterday, did this story about the Lancet study that showed that there was a dramatic undercounting of the deaths of Palestinians in Gaza. I mean, you've been saying this for a long time. I've been saying this for a long time. But this is indicative of the attempt that people are going to make to kind of clean up on aisle 12, where like they've been facilitating, aiding, abetting this genocide, and watch it too in blue MAGA world, where it's going to be like, well, we always were. No, you weren't. You were part of this. And we did this story today also where, I don't have the number in front of me, but I was like 29%, of people that didn't vote said that the primary reason they didn't vote in the election, this is Ryan Grimm did this story, is because of Gaza. And look at how many people were telling us like, oh, that's not, this isn't the thing. And it's like, Harris has more important things on her plate, and, she's working tirelessly. I mean, come on. And now we've got this whole business about the Trump thing, where it's like, I'm sorry. Yes, it was because Trump. The Palestinian negotiators are telling me that also, that there were things that the Israelis were just flat out refusing, and when Trump's people came to town, the whole tune changed. We could talk all about what's going on, with Trump and speculate about it, but just on a realpolitik level, Trump used a power available to, and he's not even the real president yet, to an incoming president. What does that mean about Biden, who was, we're not in control of Israel? No, actually, kind of you are, and Trump showed it.
No, absolutely. In the interest of like ass covering, I guess, one of the things that I wanted to show you here, I'm going to share my screen with you as well so you can see what I'm also looking at. This is from Zana, who showed the new report that came out of New York Times. Death toll in Gaza likely 40% higher than reported researchers say. And of course, 60 Minutes' coverage on the whistleblowers, the many different whistleblowers within the State Department as well, that actively spoke out, and the 60 Minutes reporting on it that came months after. As you can see here, the New York Times saying that more than 64,000 Palestinians may have been killed by traumatic injury in the first 9 months of the war in Gaza, according to a new study. The peer-reviewed statistical analysis led by epidemiologists at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine used modeling in an effort to provide an objective third-party estimate of the casualties. So it does strike me as odd for the New York Times to come out with this reporting so close to this to the finalization of the ceasefire agreements. And it almost contradicts like the subtle ways and not so subtle ways in which they have undermined, I think, the number of casualties from Israel's offensive genocide in Gaza.
Yeah, and I don't know how much you guys have. I wasn't watching. I was doing my own talking to people earlier, but I don't know how much you guys have gotten into the details of what's in this agreement. Have you covered the bases on that?
I only covered it yesterday, but from what I understand, I don't know what the new information that came out of it, but you're obviously much more familiar with the details, so I wanted to ask you about it. But the poison pill provisions that Benjamin Netanyahu kept adding on to the to the deal making process since July, like permanent military positions in the Netzarim corridor, permanent military occupation, controlling the Rafah border, a refusal of aid trucks from going in, like all of these things have seemingly been cast aside, at least even in the first phase of the negotiation, where maybe I'm wrong and you can tell me, Benjamin Netanyahu has actually conceded on these demands in terms of like removing military positions even from the Philadelphia corridor, which was a major point of contention.
Yeah, I mean, on paper, if this deal moves past this first phase, just like back up, just do a little bit of just basic architecture here. So this is a 3-phase deal. Each phase is envisioned as being 6 weeks long, 42 days. And in that first phase of the deal, you have 33 Israelis that fall under what they call the humanitarian category that are going to be released. It's on the first day, it's supposed to be 3 people. People are presuming it's going to be Kafir Bibas, Ariel Bibas, and their mother, these two kids. Kafir Bibas was 9 months old on October 7th when he was taken to Gaza. So those are supposed to be the first 3. And then they have a mathematical formula for how many Palestinians then are released. And among that group also is 5 female Israeli soldiers. And then for those, you have a different category of Palestinian prisoner. But at 50, the same time,
right?
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah,
50 for each of the female IDF soldiers released.
Right, for each of those. And then you have 600 aid trucks coming in, and then there's going to be the Israelis pulling back and eventually, withdrawing. And if they then make it on the 16th day of the first phase, they're supposed to be no later than the 16th day. They're supposed to be discussing the terms for the second phase of the agreement. Technical details of how many Israelis are going to be released from Gaza, how many Palestinians are going to be released from Palestinian prisons and other facilities. But that second phase also has language in it that envisions a total withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza. In this first phase, they're going to be going into like a buffer zone, and there was a lot of disagreement over how many meters into Gaza. Gaza's a really small territory, relatively speaking, and so what the Israelis basically have carved out is kind of drawing a thick marker ring around Gaza where they can where they're going to put their forces. And so there was a lot of discussion going up all the way to hours before this thing being announced on like literally how many meters are they going to be allowed to remain inside of Gaza. But on paper, this is full withdrawal and then envisions a permanent ceasefire. Part of what Netanyahu has been trying to sell to people, in his coalition and in Israel is that we're really just making a deal for phase one. And that we're in the driver's seat here, and I think that they believe that they're going to be able to convince Trump that there's been a violation that allows them to basically just resume, really intensely attacking the people of Gaza. But so there are loopholes that Israel can try to exploit, and the Trump dynamic is a wild one, as you know. Like I don't think any of us are under the illusion that Trump's motivated by love of the Palestinians of Gaza or humanitarian concerns. And there's certainly like a gift bag. Mohammed Shahada, the Palestinian journalist who's been covering this in an really in-depth way, I was just talking to him, and he was like, there's a goodie bag that Trump is giving to Netanyahu, and the reports in the Israeli press indicate that it's filled with a lot of really significant things, including this possibility of resuming the war in Gaza. So, I think we have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. Trump absolutely was a decisive factor certainly in the timing of this, but really in kind of finally forcing Israel to agree to it. That's true. On the other hand, Trump promotes himself as the most pro-Israel president possible. Yeah. There's indications he doesn't personally like Netanyahu at all, which could create some interesting opportunities. But on a political level, I wouldn't be hanging any hopes that Trump somehow wants this thing entirely done. The one wild card here is, like, I don't think that Donald Trump necessarily wants the Middle East in flames. He's got all these other things he wants to do during this term as president. So, there are some accidental things that could end up benefiting the people of Palestine under Trump. Whereas, Biden was like a geriatric vampire just refusing to like leave and really dedicated to the project of Greater Israel, like throughout his whole career. So, I mean, the Palestinians, they look to the left, they see something terrible. They look to the right, they see something terrible. There's a weird way in which they could end up with a better deal under Trump's presidency, just because of how absolutely atrocious Joe Biden is on the issue of Palestine.
Yeah. The other indicators that Donald Trump obviously is most likely cutting side deals with Benjamin Netanyahu that are not addressed in this at all, of course, stem from the reality that he might not like Benjamin Netanyahu, but he does like Miriam Adelson, or at least he likes $100 million that he got from Miriam Adelson. And previously, when he ran last time, he liked it from Sheldon, who is now dead.
Totally. I mean, look at the wackadoodle he's putting in charge of the embassy there.
Mike Huckabee. Yeah. A complete evangelical Zionist rabid sociopath, like worse than anything anyone could have ever imagined. A person who says Palestinians don't exist, and a person who refuses to call the West Bank, calls it Judea and Samaria. I mean, he is like a Itamar Ben-Gvir type in American Power. Like it's the equivalent, basically. So I totally understand that, and that's why, like, I've been trying to explain to people, because there's a lot of people in my chat that are saying, how dare you give Trump credit for this? I can't believe you're praising Donald Trump. Why is that controversial?
No, but why look, just spend a few minutes reading generally reliable or mainstream sources. You can find it from the left to the far right in Israeli media. They know what some of those people seem to not want to accept, which is that whatever you think of Trump or why Trump did this, we would not be talking about a Sunday cessation of Israel's war happening had Trump not intervened. That's just
Absolutely.
a fact.
Yeah.
That's not praising Trump. That's just factual.
Thank you. Exactly. and you know, there is like that's just the truth. I think that what do you say to the fact that Trump didn't send like a statesman at all, but just like a real estate developer that he golfs with uh to talk to Benjamin Netanyahu? What do you feel about the Witkoff
I mean, this
part of this?
story is so surreal. You probably talked about this, but I'll just tell a brief version of it again that like it's come out now in the Israeli media. Apparently last Friday, Steve Witkoff, who is a billionaire real estate tycoon, you know, a Trump golf buddy, as you say, and who really looked like a deer caught in the headlights when Trump pulled him onto the stage in Mar-a-Lago, like, you know, a week ago. But Witkoff has been there with Brett McGurk and Burns and, you know, from the CIA and others, and they've been a part of this team because, you know, Trump obviously is going to be president soon. And, you know, Netanyahu was pulling the kind of stuff that he's pulled on Biden and company for, you know, a year and a half. And so Witkoff, Trump's envoy, is in Doha, and he's meeting with the mediators, and he calls Israel and says, like, I'm coming tomorrow to meet with Netanyahu. And Netanyahu's people say, oh no, it's Shabbat. He can't, you know, he can't come. It's the Sabbath. And Witkoff basically says, like, I don't care what day it is. He is going to meet me.
Yeah.
And you know, and Witkoff himself is also Jewish, and he said, you know, like he was like, yeah, it doesn't matter what day it is. I'm there. And by the way, like Netanyahu is some like religious scholar or
Yeah.
something. I mean, give me a break. You know, the guy's like receiving Cohiba cigars and like jewelry, you know, according to the new Alex Gibney movie, like literally handed this stuff.
No,
So
I think that was
anyway,
deliberate, is what I'm saying. Like I suspected that it's like very that is something so like remarkably shady real estate developer type, where you're like strong arming your opponent by humiliating them to just like undermine them and tell them like who's the real person in charge. And it feels
but
like
also like
that disrespect, I
with
feel like, is like deliberate.
it is, but also like, you know, when I mean Anthony Blinken, none of these people take him seriously. Like he's, you know, he's just not taken seriously. It's just a fact. You know, he's just a creature of the Washington blob. But Trump sends like literally like a golf buddy, and it reminds me a little bit like in the Godfather films, like Tom Hagen. You know, like when Tom Hagen would show up somewhere as like the consigliere, it's like you knew he was speaking for the Don. And I think that's part of what Trump does. It's like
Yeah.
he's not sending some career bureaucrat over there. He's sending like an actual buddy of his, and that guy is not, you know, well versed in diplomacy, and he's just saying no, the president wants this done. And I think probably that really took the Israelis by surprise, with the caveat that this narrative in a way benefits Netanyahu because he can kind of Trump kind of force the hand, and you know they're going to get all of these other things out of it. Same thing with the sideshow of Ben Gvir and Smotrich, like, oh, we're going to break up the government. Like that far right flank of Netanyahu is kind of good for his propaganda right now. He's kind of trying
Yeah.
to have it all ways. So like, yes, I think there's a real thing that happened there that is serious, but the part of this is all show, you know, is show, and part of this is spin. So, you know, take it all with a grain of salt. You know, read all sources, but you know, there is no question. Palestinians recognize it. The Israelis recognize it. I'm talking about people that are making this deal. Trump played a decisive factor in this, and I know it's making people's heads explode, but we have to be able. This is going to be a long 4 years ahead of us, a long 4 years. And we have to learn to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time when we analyze the Trump presidency. And remember that Joe Biden was one of the most bloodthirsty warmongers in American history with this war, facilitating a heinous genocide and gleefully doing it for large parts of it. So let's be accurate. Let's be honest. Let's call a spade a spade. Let's recognize the dangers of Trump. Let's talk about the dangers of Trump. But also we need to be able to speak honestly about it. Like, you know, we have to tell the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. Now comes a moment of speculation, because I know I've listened to some of the conversations that you had with Mohammed, and I agree with the assessment that was made in said conversations about what the future of Palestine looks like. Whether there's been some whispers of a potential side deal, a side agreement that Donald Trump might have conducted with Benjamin Netanyahu, in Mar-a-Lago. But also on top of that, there is this idea that like the next 42 days will be of utmost importance. First and foremost, the next 4 days will be incredibly important because Israel does have a tendency to escalate its bombing campaigns in the build up to a ceasefire. They've always done this historically.
They're doing it as we speak,
and
right
they're
now.
doing it as exactly.
Like,
they're
literally.
doing it right now as we are having this conversation. So every single Palestinian I've talked to that is in Gaza right now, I'm like, how are you feeling about this? Are you feeling joyous? Has said, I'm waiting for Sunday. Like Sunday cannot come soon enough because I don't like every single person, no matter what age they are, is like, I will celebrate when it's Sunday, when the ceasefire is actually implemented, because they all know that Israel's modus operandi in situations like this is to really escalate the bombing until the very last moment of the facilitation of ceasefire. But then after that, there is obviously 42 days of supposed peace. And in the aftermath of that, when phase one turns into phase two with like the troops leaving the region, the IOF, like leaving the Gaza Strip, that is where everyone is speculating that Benjamin Netanyahu will sully on the deal and will go back to business as usual.
Could happen that way. Although, once you get this kind of a framework in place, there will be different forms of challenges to Israel trying to do that. You also are, this also envisions internationals being on the ground in, a variety of capacities. So I think that's a real risk. I think it's a real possibility. I don't think it's a fait accompli. And I have had a similar experience with Palestinians I've been talking to today in Gaza. Except, I mean, I think on the one hand, like Abu Bakr Abed, who's reports for Dropsite and Electronic Intifada, and went viral with his press conference the other day talking about the lack of solidarity with Palestinian journalists. He's crying tears of joy. I mean, just the mere idea that there could be an end to this, even if the future is uncertain. I think we have to recognize none of us understand the complex emotions of what it's like to be a Palestinian of Gaza, particularly a Palestinian who is in Gaza right now. I mean, even Mohammed Shahada, who's not in Gaza right now but is from Gaza, at the end of my conversation with him, he said, that as I look at all of this and I start to realize how many people from my own family are either killed or missing. So many of us, we talk to Palestinians, we ask them to tell us the facts, what's going on, give us analysis. My friend Layla Al-Arian, the great journalist from Al Jazeera, her mother's family has lost 200 people. 200 members of their family have been killed in Gaza. And so, I think it is important for them to be able to celebrate this moment while recognizing that they are dealing with liars, warmongers who are intent on erasing their people from the world. And all of us, we cannot stop talking about Gaza. In fact, this is probably one of the most important moments for people to actually all be focused on it, because people are going to say, oh, well, this is resolved. It's not resolved. We're dealing with really dangerous people on the other side of this agreement that have a long history of violating these agreements. And that's where the bad parts of Trump come into play when it relates to Israel. Like, to what extent is he actually going to be willing to restrain Netanyahu? What deals has he already made? These are really, really relevant questions. Trump is dangerous on Israel. For sure, he is dangerous. He's dangerous for the Palestinians. But he's the one that at least got this to stop for now when it comes to, American officials or American figures.
Absolutely. So what is what's your speculation as to what will happen in the next couple of days, though, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think that there was an order issued. Israeli media is reporting this, that the Israeli forces are supposed to continue full spectrum intense attacks right up to the moment that this thing officially kicks into effect. It's supposed to be on Sunday. I think that one dynamic here, when Israeli captives start to get released and we start to learn who's alive and who's dead. I think that there is going to be pressure felt from the Israelis to punish the Palestinians again, depending on who's living, who's dead, what's described about their conditions. So, we should pay close attention to this. And what will often be lost in this is those kinds of stories from the Palestinian side. Palestinians have been raped in Israeli prisons, sexually abused,
Raped to
physically
death.
abused, tortured, raped to death. Had all sorts of sadistic experimentation happen on them. And I think that it is important that we also focus on those stories, the individual stories of Palestinians who come out of those prisons. We all watched what was happening in Syria. I mean, those first days when the Assad government was brought down, and Syria is still very much up in the air, but just on a micro level, looking at what does it look like when the prison bars are broken down? What does it look like when people get free? And you see the emotion, and I think any human being seeing people released from dungeons, if you're a normal caring human being, it pulls at your heart in a very real way. And it's like the Palestinians have been waiting 77 years to have those moments for their people that are locked up in these Israeli prisons. And we don't do enough work on telling the individual stories of the Palestinian hostages, of the Palestinians who've been snatched. In the Israeli media, they've done a very effective job. They tell the story. Every single Israeli who was taken captive, their stories have been told in films, in news segments, in articles. There's memorials, there's posters. There's more than 10,000 Palestinians. There's no posters for them. There's no stories being written about what's happened to them. I mean, look at the children who've lost limbs.
There's no additional $250 million from a governing party in the interest of doing more propaganda to the West either on the Palestinian side, in the way that like the Israeli Knesset has offered additional budget allotments to doing just that, to Hasbara operations. And this obviously works effectively to humanize only Israelis in this process, and actively undermine and dehumanize the Palestinian victims in the hands of Israel, despite the numbers showing a far different reality than the one that is presented in mainstream news. I guess the last question I have for you, Jeremy, and thank you so much for spending time with us today, is in terms of going into Gaza. This is a real question that I have both for myself. I've been talking to some people that have worked inside of Gaza in the past as well, like some of the journalists. And if the Rafah corridor is open in the aftermath of this, ceasefire, is there a possibility to go into Gaza, and how dangerous it is? Like, do you think that Israel will allow foreign journalists and foreign humanitarian rights groups to actually go into Gaza to conduct investigations and to shine a light to the full scale of the atrocities? Because I'm very fearful that this goes completely against Israel's interests of maintaining this faucet of propaganda. And if all of a sudden, as you've mentioned, the claims being made by Palestinians are laid bare and are now being shown by Western reporters, these trusted institutions that Western chauvinists seemingly only care about when they are reporting on it, all of a sudden the dynamic will be very different, and it will certainly play a role in undermining Israel on the global political stage.
I mean, there's a real question of whether Israel will even be able to prevent it. And the Egyptian government has not exactly been the great facilitator of press being able to cross over into Gaza. I mean, it happens. It doesn't happen now, but it has happened in the past. But there's been a lot of struggle. And early on in the Gaza genocide, there was an attempt. Activist caravans went down, and the Egyptian government tried to stop them. And you've had journalists try to go down, and only a handful of non-Palestinian journalists have been able to make it in, usually, for a very brief moment of time. Like, I don't want to get into a whole side discussion about Clarissa Ward, but the way that
Yeah, I was just talking about her earlier this morning. That was to give her flowers on that one. That was actually a ballsy move that she pulled off, and I do respect
well,
her
I'm
for
saying
that.
I'm bringing it up because it's like, it's that's been the like kind of that's the chit that's been thrown to the kind of broader press, is that like occasionally something like that has happened. Um, But there's a real question of whether they're going to be able to stop it, because Egypt also is going to insist on its sovereignty in this equation. My guess is that journalists are going to be able to get in. On the issue of safety, look, you're in an unstable environment where at any moment the Israelis could decide that there's been a quote unquote violation. But I think journalists have to try to go in, and I think journalists
Absolutely.
need to continue the pressure. And to their credit, Western reporters have gone through a process of Israel where they filed litigation saying that this is undemocratic and anti-press to not allow journalists to go in there. I think there's going to be a lot of Western journalists, of all stripes, that are trying to get in there. It's like, I mean, if you're talking about yourself going in there, I think you have to trust local reporters and journalists and listen to them and take seriously their assessments. But that kind of work is always dangerous. This is not like you're going on, an organized field trip or something. Like,
No, I
this
know.
is real. This is serious, and the Israelis are very, very dangerous. I think that we also at Dropsite, we have to talk about how we're going to approach this. I mean, very, very early on, we were trying to get people in. When I was back at the Intercept, we had discussions about it. We've had discussions about it at Dropsite. We have great Palestinian colleagues that have done a remarkably heroic job covering this. It's important also that non-Palestinian journalists go in there to pick up some of the pressure on our Palestinian colleagues and start telling the world. And the reality is, unfortunately, that sometimes people listen more to to non-Palestinian journalists. I mean, that's just like, it's horrible, but it's true. And I think that it's going to be an undeniable crime scene that people are going to be witnessing, and that's why the Israelis don't want anybody in there.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking about the logistics. Like, this just happened, so it will be like, the nature of my coverage is that it's real time live stream broadcasting. So I don't know if that offers a crosshair or a shield in that regard, where it's just like it's something that is impossible to reckon with or avoid, I guess, in that regard.
I mean, look, I was in Yemen at the height of Obama's drone wars, and in Somalia and other places where, is there officially a war declared? No, but there's, part of the nature of war. I mean, I think people who watch too many films think it's just like all the time. One of the most terrifying things about being in a war zone is that nothing ever happens in a predictable manner. You can think that, oh, we're like, we were out in the field. Let me just give you an example. We're out in the field. We're filming people. We were filming this thing, but now we're back to wherever we're staying, and we're safe. Well, why do you think you're safe? Anything can happen there. So it's the unpredictable, unexpected nature of it that often is kind of the most terrifying. And I think that's true also of civilians. How many stories of Palestinians did we hear where a parent says, oh, I went out to forage for food, and then their family is killed when they go out? Or someone gets sent out to go and do a mundane task. I'm going to fill some water, and they end up getting killed. I mean, to me, that's the war is not like you see in films. It's like one of the most terrifying aspects of it is that bad, horrifying things can happen at any moment. And I think that vibe is still going to be true, even if there's this quote unquote, cessation of hostilities in that first phase. But that's what journalists do. They go and they take calculated risks, and sometimes the calculations have to be thrown away because of that unpredictable nature of what can happen in a war zone.
Well, I'd like to talk to you more about that offline as well, in terms of like what the best possible way to do that as well. But thank you so much, Jeremy, for coming on and enlightening us as always.
Always
And
good to be
also,
with you.
thank you so much for your consistent, continued coverage.
And thanks to you also, like you really helped get Dropsite off the ground, and like so many people from this stream are now like subscribers and write us, and so we're super grateful like for your solidarity and your help, and also helping Dropsite launch into the world. You often like disparage yourself, man, but like when you do something that's when you do something that's hitting, it's really hitting. Like, and I think your voice matters more than you give yourself credit for.
I try to do my best, but I am at the end of the day nothing without my community, and I think that they are the ones who make my reach more meaningful, I think. But once again, thank you so much. All right.
All right. Take care, everybody.
All right. Bye.